Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max.
Welcome, everyone. We are the Geek Patrol, and our microphones don't have a stun setting. I'm Joe Thorderson, here with my friends Brandon Olmsted and Alan Gilbreth and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. And we're living in interesting times, you guys. Well, okay, we have something we're going to get to in just a second. Later, I hope you guys will give me permission to vent about Daredevil, Born Again.
It all depends on how you contribute to the rest of the conversation leading up to it.
Okay, so we'll see. Episodes 5 and 6 came out, which affected. I'm not saying they changed my mind about the show, but they are affecting it. I'm seeing little cracks in the foundation that we'll address. But before we get to that, like I said, we are living in interesting times because there are characters, there are stories, there are properties out there that we grew up with that are suddenly aging out, I guess you could say. They're coming into the public domain. And so that means anybody, you and I, could go make a movie about these characters.
That's true.
These stories. We're seeing things like with Winnie the Pooh and everything. And what do you got coming up? Popeye the Slayer Man.
Yeah, we got a Popeye the Slayer Man. We have any number of unauthorized Sherlock Holmes books, movies, and other stuff.
Yeah.
And there is now a Screamboat Willie.
Well, that's my question, Brandon. Why is so it seems like the default thing is like as soon as something comes on the public domain, they make a horror movie out of it. Right. They take something innocent like Winnie the Pooh and they make it like a slasher movie.
Winnie the Pooh was
here
all
we go.
about... All right, I don't know if you ever read any of the old Winnie the Pooh stuff. But
Can't say that I did.
Winnie the Pooh is a more clean version, basically, of the Aesop fables or the Grimm fairy tales. They weren't, until somebody got a hold of them and sanitized it for kids.
Yeah.
They weren't cheery stories. They were very dark lessons.
Well, it was written in response to the First World War, which was like meaningless death.
Right, exactly.
Oh, Winnie the Pooh was?
Yeah.
That's
Dude,
true.
we literally did an episode where we talked about that documentary.
That's right. Well, there's a great movie about it. I think it's called Being Christopher Robin. What is that called? It's a good movie.
Hey,
and
Max,
it's all about the guy that created Winnie the Pooh.
When we have a storyline thing like this coming up, you need to replay old episodes for Joe.
Yeah.
He's losing his mental facilities.
Oh, I forget things.
His memory sucks.
Well, but I do have a question though. But so why not? Okay, well that makes my point. You're saying the original Winnie the Pooh was somewhat dark in theme and everything. Well, why is the automatic thing to make a horror movie?
Well, the genuine thing is the automatic reason to do a horror movie is literally to get your name out there with connected to one of these properties. And horror movies are the easiest thing in the world to film.
Huh.
Well, I'm reminded of a recent remake of a classic property with Pinocchio with Guillermo del Toro. He did like a really good job of rehashing that. So I guess it's all about the proper person with the proper tools.
It is all about making your money back. And when you snowed enough studios into believing you're an amazing auteur, they'll give you a ton of money to do your version of Pinocchio. Because Guillermo del Toro isn't like these guys. These are all young and hungry upcoming directors and writers who can now grab a hold of Mickey Mouse and his Steamboat Willie persona, do a really quick horror movie for, like maybe $500, and even in just DVD sales, because most of them will put it out on physical media, make, $5,000, $10,000, which they can put into doing other things.
So you might call this sort of like, for young and upcoming directors, this sort of approach is sort of the rite of passage into the bigger world.
Exactly. Most of your young and upcomers, if you look at fan films or independent films, a lot of them gear towards horror because you don't have to film as much. You can film in the dark and nobody's going to yell about your lighting. You can do all these. You can make all the amateur mistakes you want, and it adds to the ambiance. And now that you just have these public domain figures, a lot of it is also basically saying up yours to the big studios.
Huh.
Plus, what I like about horror in terms of like not needing a lot is horror doesn't tend to take itself too seriously, which I like.
Yeah, and I'm going to agree with Max on that. I think one of the things I love the most about movies nowadays is when you have a movie that doesn't take itself too seriously. When your comedies have to have some underlying tragedy or message so that it hits close to home, I don't want to watch that crap. I want to watch something funny that's goofy. I watched Hundreds of Beavers. I don't really recommend it for an American audience. If you got Canadian mindset, you go for it. It's awesome in that film. It is not, and I've realized after talking with Alan about it, the reason why it wasn't hitting with me was because of the fact that I was thinking of it from the point of view of an American audience. And we, as Americans, I'm sorry, in the midst of all of our garbage, society falling apart crap, we are taking everything too seriously. When we are going to get up in arms about a commercial about coffee, we really got to go back and find some of that childlike wonder we had. And, of course, that would lead into a much bigger episode about why the 80s rocked, no matter how offensive they were. But we can't do that here on the air because we only have so many minutes.
It's funny you say that because not to change subject, but if Ferris Bueller was made today, it would be ripped apart because there's 8 million holes in the plot. You couldn't physically do everything they did in that day. Why is a school bus taking you home at 6:30 at night?
Right.
Just stuff like that. But
you
have to suspend the.
I was talking with my wife recently, and I said that as much as certain things in the 80s were they're not politically correct, they're highly offensive. You couldn't do them today. There was something that the 80s movies gave you, no matter how bad they were. There's this hope, heart, and just character to an 80s movie that you don't find in any movie nowadays, from the lowest of low independent B movies up to the highest of tentpole features. The thing that's missing is heart. And that's because American audiences don't understand heart anymore.
And also, go ahead, Alan.
Well, I'm going to point out actually a fast-growing genre online, which just cracks me up beyond all comprehension, are Chinese soap operas.
What's noteworthy about them? I can't say I've ever watched a Chinese soap opera.
Well, you get the we're going to say you get to watch how another culture acts and overreacts, just like an American soap opera.
Yeah.
An American soap opera is overreaction to everything, right? So you get to watch another culture overreact to everything, but they always have a good overarching theme.
Okay. Well, we'll continue that weird conversation when we come back here on Geek Tank Radio.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. Did someone order a life-size statue of Optimus Prime? The Geek Patrol is back.
And welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Brandon Olmstead and Alan Gilbreth and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. And if you're just tuning in...
I got to interrupt you, Joe.
What?
Sorry. I know I give you grief about the rejoiners all the time with you reacting to them.
Yeah.
That rejoiner, I have to say, a friend of mine went on a whirlwind geek vacation recently and sent me a picture of himself standing in front of a life-size statue of Optimus Prime.
Was that in Georgetown?
I don't know. I didn't ask him, and I didn't really pay attention when he was talking about it.
Okay.
Because I love my friends, but I don't care.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a picture of my friend Brian now standing with a giant Optimus Prime.
Okay. I bet that's where it was, because that homeowner got in trouble because he lives in this fancy Georgetown neighborhood. We covered that story here on Geek Tank Radio years ago, and I bet you that's where he was. So
I think they all got moved to the local park.
Yeah.
So they could all be enjoyed by everyone.
Well, no, because that was a statue of Optimus Prime from the movies. This is the cool G1 original comic and cartoon style. Optimus.
Okay.
It was inside, so it wasn't that one. But yeah, just the idea is kind of like, it made me smile when I heard that rejoinder, and I don't normally get that.
Yeah. Well.
I normally groan.
We were talking earlier about there's a lot of properties that are out in the public domain now, which means you're going to start seeing some unusual movies and books and stories that come out about characters you're familiar with, but somehow that meandered into a conversation about 80s movies, which I'm always happy to talk about. I mean, but Alan, you said something off the air that made a lot of sense, because Brandon was sort of tapping into what is it that made those movies so special, but you also hit on something too that was
I'll compliment of foreign movies because, well, in my particular lifestyle, Asian movies get portrayed a lot. Of animes on occasion. You look at 80s movies and especially horror films. You know, I absolutely adore how they backstory somebody on occasion. It's like, oh no, Brandon is coming into the village. Brandon can throw fireballs. Well, how does he do that? He was born in a volcano.
Yeah.
And that is it. That's
the whole
all the backstory you need.
I was
Brandon's
gonna go.
coming in. Get ready for the fight.
I was gonna go.
That's all you need, man.
Why does he throw fireballs? Spicy tuna.
There you
And
go. It's
Just get down to business.
Oh yeah.
I call that strategic exposition.
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
because there was a show that I saw recently where it's like you didn't explain the why of a villain. Like, why was this guy total trash? Well, it's like, oh, let's explain as he's dying in the last episode why this guy is trash. It's like, oh, he's somewhat sympathetic, but it's like the rest of the series, he's just total garbage.
Yeah, why didn't you do that at the beginning and then complicate the thing? Yeah.
Best villains, they got a splinter in their toe and decided they hated the world.
Yep.
Yeah. See, you don't like sympathetic villains. I like Killmonger.
No,
I like him because he's sympathetic.
I
like,
love sympathetic villains who end up having an arc where they become a heroic and sympathetic character. I'm also one of those people who's had enough tragedy in my life where I didn't turn around and go, you know what? F those people.
Yeah.
I just like, does it move the story?
Kind of like with Scar with Full Metal Alchemist.
Exactly. Does it move the story? Is it moving the story forward, or are we word count filling?
Yeah.
Edgar Allan Poe was both a proponent and critic of word count filling, because back in his day, newspapers paid by the word.
Right.
So you put as many words in as you could to get paid, whether they had anything to do with moving the story forward. In a horror movie, generally you are looking at you know what, dudes, we can afford about 90 minutes of this.
Yep.
Let's get this on, and done.
And I know it's a subject we were going to talk about later in the show, but that in of itself goes directly into the need to vent about episodes 5 and 6 of Daredevil.
Yeah. Yeah.
That because literally the amount that the story moved in those 2 episodes could have filled about half of one of the episodes we'd had so far.
That's my beef. But hey, I just want to say one thing though, because it's funny, the show always unfolds organically, because one thing I love about doing the show with you guys is I always learn something, or I always think of something new.
Yeah.
Well, Brandon, you said something. I asked the question right away. I said, why is it that the default seems to be that when you have something come out in the public domain, the first thing is, let's make a horror movie about it. Let's make a horror Winnie the Pooh. Let's make a horror Popeye.
I want to put it out there. The first thing I read about Sherlock Holmes when he officially went public domain is a novel where Sherlock Holmes comes across the Lament configuration. So it's Sherlock Holmes versus Hellraiser.
Oh, I don't know what the Lament configuration is.
The Lament configuration is the puzzle box that unleashes Pinhead and his Cenobites into the world.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
it's an interesting game.
But you said something along the lines that a horror movie's cheap. It's a good way for a filmmaker to get their work out there. It's sort of a stepping stone. Well, that's not a noble reason to tell a story. I'm sorry.
No. The noble. We are making money here, Joe. Why are you going to nobility?
See, that's my beef.
Nobody makes a movie to be noble.
Well, you should. I mean, when we talked to Craig
if
Brewer,
you want to lose some money.
Well, here's my thing. It's like, if you make a movie, it's not about you. It's about the movie. It's about the story. And if you're going to that's what bugs me about Tim Burton movies. It's always got to be a Tim Burton-y thing. Like, why not just...
Because
I'd like to watch a movie where I didn't know who made the movie. Like,
well, you're certainly going to watch John Carpenter then.
I'm just saying. But
he's
or M. Night Shyamalan.
For example, I could
Wes
see...
Anderson.
I could see, speaking of public domain, I think you could make a Frankenstein movie that could be super inspirational and uplifting, believe it or not. I mean...
Have you read the book?
Yeah. I'm just saying, it could be a vehicle that actually makes you feel good at the end.
You do understand, even as horrible as we have made Frankenstein in the movies on occasion, it's nothing compared to the book. Did you know Peter Pan was going to kill the children?
Well,
did you know that any Grimm's fairy tale was child
that's what
abuse
I'm saying.
and animal torture?
We take something that's horror and we make it into something inspirational.
Right,
So I'm saying you could flip the script.
Horror is an easy way of dealing with any form of
trauma,
anxiety, trauma, why the world is going bad, why the world is going good. the fact that Popeye the Slayer Man is going to be running around with his giant forearms,
beating people in a canning factory, a tuna or a spinach canning factory.
It's getting out of hand. Okay, we'll be coming back here on Geek Tank Radio.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. The Geek Patrol is back.
I didn't steal it. I made that item. Made it with the magic that I stole.
And welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Brandon Olmstead and Alan Gilbreth and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. And it's just weird, once again, we probably need to run the mics while we're off the air, but we were talking about public domain properties and the fact that Popeye the Slayer Man is coming up. That's going to be one of the next productions. And
oh no,
honestly,
it's out. You can watch it.
Oh, it is. Honestly, even as a kid, I always thought Popeye was creepy. Everybody on there is unsettling. I mean, I would not leave my kids alone with Popeye. I'm sorry.
And yet somebody abandoned their kid and he took care of it.
But they're going to make, to me, it's a pretty easy transition to make that. Now I wonder who the hero is in the show. So you're saying he's going to be a murderer.
So here's the thing about horror movies with a legendary slasher. You really don't have a hero in those movies. You have a girl who is the most innocent who somehow manages to thwart the villain at the very end. The final girl stereotype. It's great, and that can sometimes be inspirational. But usually you've got a group of ne'er-do-wells who stumble upon something that awakens the evil that then goes after them.
So where does he get? Is this all going to happen at the docks or
It is in an abandoned spinach canning factory.
Yep. They are there to investigate the legend of the Sailor Man. Yeah.
That seems very limiting. I guess their budget was small, right? They just found an empty warehouse.
Like literally,
One
of the people probably
they had no money to shoot on water.
Right. Just like Wimpy trying to buy hamburgers, they're trying to make a movie. They will gladly pay you Tuesday for VHS tape today.
Oh wow!
All right, Brandon, how many abandoned sites just around town have you and I gone by and gone? We can make a whole movie right there.
There's a ton.
There's several.
You know what?
And most of them don't have security, and so you could have a whole movie filmed before anybody realized you were there.
You know what's even more horrifying is the thought of some guy live action eating out of a can of canned spinach. That is not going to be pleasant to look at. I mean,
I'm a bigger fan of raw spinach anyway. So something stewed and left in a can, it's just disgusting.
All right, well, we'll be keeping an eye on it. Are you going to actually watch this? Because it seems like something you'll watch.
Yeah, absolutely, I'm going to watch it. I've watched Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 1 and 2.
Okay.
I've already watched Popeye's Revenge, which I don't know why Popeye was at a campground, but okay.
All right, see, the other thing is, sometimes movies and shows are just abandon ye all hope.
Yeah.
And just wander in.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, get in or get out of the story. If you're in the story, great. I'll even pick on Max for a moment, that a number of animes are like that are honestly so twisted, so bizarre, so completely over the top. You just get in or get out. And
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Or One Punch Man.
I was about to say One Punch Man.
Yeah, One Punch Man. Just forget it,
Hey, Max, what was the one with the guy with the prehensile nose hairs?
Oh, God.
I can't remember.
Yeah, well, how about
it
just
was
Tank
a really
Girl?
dumb name.
How about just Tank Girl with talking
Any
kangaroos?
of those. Squirrel Girl. Yeah.
You just, sometimes you just actually want goofy, mindless entertainment that follows a certain genre.
Yeah.
See, folks, it just goes to show that sometimes the best humor is violence.
There you go. All right. Well, on that note, let's shift gears. So, speaking of violence, Daredevil Born Again, which is more or less Daredevil season 4, because they are picking up literally right after season 3. Well, years later. I don't know. I guess it's 7 or 8 years later. But Brandon, I was really enjoying the show, and I'm not abandoning it, but I'm seeing little elements of what I would call the Disneyfication of it, only because these last 2 episodes, to me, you could have done these in 10 minutes. and they made 2 full episodes out of it.
So you mean more like the Brian Michael Bendis version of Daredevil, where it took 7 issues to tell a 1-issue story?
I guess I didn't read that one, but here's my beef. Okay, so they have this heist. They
Right.
have this heist bank move. And sorry, folks, we're dealing with spoilers, but the premise was cool. What they really needed to do was get this one stone. They took forever to get it. They're standing around talking. They're having long conversations when the clock is ticking.
Right.
And honestly, I was hoping they'd shoot that one bank manager. That guy was getting on my nerves. He was so irritating.
You mean Miss Marvel's dad?
I don't care. It's like, oh, and then the shameless product placement. And I'm just saying, man, I'm like, why did they do this? Why do you make a 30-minute episode with something that you could have done in 5 minutes? I mean,
you have just asked the $64,000 question that nobody's ever been able to answer about television.
Okay. Well, I mean,
I'll tell you exactly what the storyline here is.
How did Seinfeld have more than one season?
Okay.
yeah, I mean, but
Nobody knows. Seinfeld literally meant, there was no character growth for how many years?
right.
Ever?
Yeah.
At all?
That poor guy kept running in the door.
And one other thing I'll throw into this too. In the second episode, in episode 6, episode 6 was definitely better, but it was one of these things with what I consider weak storytelling. Daredevil had Muse completely incapacitated. He had him basically tied up, and then he turns his back. He unties him, turns his back on him, and he's surprised when he gets away. That's weak story. I mean, why didn't he just leave him tied up and take him to the police or something?
Because he's having a crisis of conscience.
Oh, are you trying to defend this?
No,
this is bad writing.
I'm
so
telling
it's like,
you the truth, Joe, and don't give me bad writing. I read your rewrite of The Last Jedi. You can shut up about bad writing.
Well, what we're trying to say is
you drove
Joe
400
knows
copywriters
bad
to the
writing.
early grave.
I'm just saying, though. I mean, come on, man.
No, it's not bad writing. It's bad editing.
Okay.
Because the storylines are there. There's been plenty of times where Daredevil just, he kind of has that crisis of consciousness. Right now, the whole point of the heist episode was to lead him to the point where people like him, the vigilantes, he has to put the suit back on because of he's needed.
Okay.
He is necessary. And it took, that whole episode, but he's still not there. You remember when Frank said you're not here to chastise, you're here looking for permission?
Oh, yeah, like he was ready to, he's
Right,
ready to go.
right.
So, okay.
This whole thing about Born Again is it's based on a Frank Miller story where Matt has to find his way.
Oh, I didn't know it was based on a thing. Okay, so they're a little limited because they're trying to stick to that. All right. Well, we have more to talk about when we come back here on Geek Tank Radio.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. The Geek Patrol is back.
I like being bad. It makes me happy.
And we'll come back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Brandon Olmstead and Alan Gilbreth and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. And if you're just tuning in, I'm not ripping the whole season to shreds. We're talking about Daredevil, Born Again, episodes 5 and 6. I'm more or less just complaining a little bit, Brandon, about the pacing and some other things. It reminds me a lot of the very end of what is it, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where Sam is basically he's at the end and he's talking to these politicians, and I'm like, wow, he just made a really good point. Maybe he'll stop talking. Then he keeps going. Then he goes. Then he makes maybe a sort of a good point. Then he keeps talking. This should have been, you say this, you drop the mic, and you go to the next scene. Instead, they ruined the whole scene because he spent 6 minutes talking about something you could have said in 30 seconds.
Well, so. I'm gonna agree with you on that.
Okay.
That speech at the end of Falcon and Winter Soldier, only because of the fact that we are of a generation where you made the point, and our comprehension got it. And I'm gonna blame. Oh God, I feel bad. I feel like the old man shaking his fist at the sky right now, blaming this.
Yeah.
But modern audiences have the attention span of a fruit fly. So if you don't reiterate the point multiple times, they don't get it.
I don't.
Don't even remotely try and defend the TikTok generation, Joe.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying even classic movies or classic stories, they say something, boom, and that's it. They
Those are
step away.
classic stories written and told at a time when we were taught in school to understand the point.
Okay.
People don't get the point. Have I ever talked to you about the end, the cliffhanger ending of the introduction of Negan in Walking Dead?
Oh,
For
no.
4 months, I listened to people cry, bitch, moan, and complain because they did not understand what a cliffhanger was and why they didn't have the answer to who got killed right then and there. And I know I talked about it when we were in a different location.
I remember that,
in a classic episode. We went over this about and I pinpointed the people who were having a fit about it were of a certain millennial generation, and that's when everything had started to be fed to you. Every comic had way too many narration bubbles. When the picture itself is telling you exactly what Gambit is doing, the narration bubble is like, Gambit has charged his cards with his kinetic energy, his mutant power, in order to send them flying through the sky to blow up the Sentinel. You're watching them explode on the Sentinel in the exact picture.
So what you're trying to say is we'd have never found out who killed JR.
Right.
It sounds like you're defending these writers.
I'm not defending the writers.
I'm not.
No. I'm not excusing what they do, but I'm giving you the reason why.
I don't think they're. I think they just don't know what they're doing.
And this just goes to show that your comprehension might be just as bad as theirs because you're not getting the point.
I think what happens is they're in the writers' room.
They are catering to a young audience that has to have things spoon-fed to them, or they don't get it.
I don't know. I think they were given the edict. I don't know. We're going to make this whole thing a bank heist and
Joe,
fill it in. It's kind of like the Marvel method of how they did comics.
Hollywood has been doing 2.5-hour bank heist movies that are literally that same episode, just 2.5 hours long. 2.5 hours long.
I don't know.
For years.
I thought it was pretty bad. But
anybody seen The Inside Man?
I thought that was that's what I thought they were going for, is something along the lines of The Inside Man, because that's a good. I like that.
The other part of that storyline was to connect Daredevil to, because so far all we've seen is straight up the Netflix Daredevil. That episode also connected it to the MCU as a whole because Kamala Khan's dad is the assistant bank manager there.
Yeah,
that's
he was
her
irritating.
Father. He is irritating.
Yeah.
But you know who else is irritating? 90% of the supporting cast that don't get named other than woman in bank.
Now, let me ask you this. Because
the one who says, please sit down before,
oh, yeah.
Thank you for doing this. But, yeah, that character's annoying.
I like the first 4 episodes. And so my hope is that maybe these are they just get these out of the way in the middle, and then you'll forget about them once if they wrap up in a satisfying way.
It's a 2-season. It's a 2-season order, dude. It's not getting wrapped up in a good way at the end of this season.
I guess we'll see. And then, of course, we got to see we found out why his knuckles are being regularly bloodied. And which was no big surprise, because you knew that guy.
We already knew him. He had that guy, Alex or whatever his name is, chained up somewhere.
Now you told us this is based on a comic book, and folks, by the way, we're talking spoilers because that's
Frank Miller, Born Again,
and that's from the 80s or 90s. That's because I almost bought that graphic novel the other day. I was just gonna check it out, but you said that there's something. There's a lot of points in there. Are they sticking to that story? Because we don't want to give away.
For the most part, I mean, if you buy the most recent edition of that graphic novel, it's got a foreword from Charlie Cox, the guy who plays Daredevil.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's neat. Okay, but at the same time, maybe it's not a good
meanwhile,
idea.
you can also get it for $12 on Amazon.
Okay, but don't read it if you don't want spoilers.
Read it.
I mean, because there's things about Foggy Nelson.
Kind of go along with the story.
Okay, I don't know. All right. Well, I mean, Alan, are you even watching this? I didn't hear you chiming in because I don't think you. You don't have opinions about this.
You and I watch things very differently.
Yeah.
And I understand the reason why the pace slowed, because we were doing, like we said earlier, in foreign movies, you often have long periods of time while your main character stews over something. You put them in the bath, you gotta let them soak for a little bit.
I would have gone with the teabag seeping thing, but
I was, but I just
now we all see people in bathtubs, and that's just not good.
You know?
Yeah, get your
on the
metaphor
horror.
straight.
We're back on the horror stuff.
Yeah, it depends on which movie you're, what you're cooking here. There is, long pauses, especially in European movies where, okay, we're just going to torture the main person a little longer. They're not quite there yet. And then you hear the little timer go off and you go, okay, now we have a fully cooked, superhero, serial killer, or whatever it is we were trying to get them there.
Well, there's a lot of good threads out there, and we'll be watching. I'm sure it'll resolve itself. But it just, it was so tight the first 4 episodes. That's why I was a little, they have high standards. You guys, we got to get out of here. The show is over. So until next week, we are the Geek Patrol, and I am Joe Thorderson.
I'm Alan Gilbreth.
I'm Maximilian.
And I am Brandon Olmstead, waiting patiently for your many pitches of the public domain of Gore Tank Radio.